Well, towards the end of last month, the Attorney-General, Christian Porter, introduced a new bit of legislation into the West Australian Parliament. It's called the Criminal Organisations Control Bill. When he brought this into the Parliament, I'll tell you, when he first introduced the bill, he made a speech. And this, right at the very start of it, he said this. He said that 135 patched members of outlaw motorcycle gangs had been charged with over 600 offences, many of a serious nature, such as extortion, drug dealing and abduction. And he said police sources revealed almost half of WA's outlaw bikie gang community and members had faced serious criminal charges in the previous 2 years. Now, that's the fundamental reason he says that he was bringing this legislation into the Parliament. On anyone's judgment, it's strong legislation. In fact, he says so himself. He says it's the toughest organised crime legislation in Australia. And he says what would happen as a result of this, he said outlaw motorcycle gangs would be subject to applications, and that would be by the police, to become declared criminal organisations in fully argued hearings before a judge or a retired judge. And once that had happened, then there would be extreme consequences likely for members of those organisations. Joining me now, I've got two members of a group known as the United Motorcycle Council of Western Australia. Doylie is from Club Deroes and Duff is from the Gypsy Jokers. Good morning to both of you.
Morning. Morning, Paul.
Fellas, I suppose at the very outset, the best question to start is, why would you think that these laws are aimed at you?
Well, you know, they keep bringing up outlaws motorcycle, and I've got to just get you on something straight away, Paul. We're not gangs, we're clubs, we're motorcycle clubs, and you know they keep bringing up gangs and this sort of thing. That's bullshit. We're clubs, and we're not gangs. So where that comes from, I don't know. You know, it's probably just the fear campaign.
Well, it's his term. He talks about 135 patched members of outlaw motorcycle gangs.
Yeah, but
it's
you know as well as I
used.
do, they can charge you with whatever you like. But are you actually convicted? You know, how many people have been convicted from those charges? Not too many, I can guarantee. We know our clubs, and we know the blokes, you know, there's a couple in jail here and there. But, you know, you can charge people with whatever you like. They could be traffic charges. You know what I mean? Explain it. Show where, you know, what the charges are. Name people if you want, and we'll explain it.
Mm. Well, just tell me, why do you think these laws are aimed at you? If you guys...
Because they want to get laws in on the back of something that, you know, gives them good press, looks good to the community, you know, on the back of motorcycle clubs. Just like they brought in the confiscation laws. They brought them in on the back of motorcycle clubs. Then they used them on a 90-year-old couple and kicked them out of their house and took their house.
Mm.
Now, those laws were meant to be for motorcycle clubs. That's how it started.
So you guys are from Club Deroes and from the Gypsy Jokers and Duff and the Gypsy Jokers. I suppose the groups that we would think this is most likely aimed at are the Coffin Cheaters, at the Rebels, and maybe the Rock Machine. Now, I noticed that the Rebels and Rock Machine, Rebels are members of the council.
That's right.
Rock Machine aren't, and the Coffin Cheaters are members of the council as well. Why today aren't I talking to maybe members of those two groups who most people in the community might think that these laws are aimed at?
Because we're the only ones available, really. Everyone else is working and got commitments, they couldn't get here. So we come in for the United Motorcycle Council to speak for them, not for other clubs, individual clubs. We're speaking for the whole United Motorcycle Council.
Yeah, I know you are. But, okay, well, look, if it's an individual issue, if you guys personally feel threatened by it, you'd only be threatened by it if the cops decided to go to a judge and say that the Doylie, Club Deroes or Duff, Gypsy Jokers should be a prescribed organisation.
Yeah, but Paul, what is a prescribed? What's organised crime? Is it two blokes sitting around the table having a beer, then they decide to go down and rob the local deli? Is that organised crime? Because they've organised it, they've talked about it, they've gone and done it? What is it?
But Doylie, wouldn't they would then have to go and put forward a case, and they say it'll be an open court, and provide evidence.
Secret evidence. You know, they talk about the Bikie Code of Silence and our secrecy and stuff like that, but they want to take you to court. You can't see the evidence they've got against you and then declare you or control you under an order, and that's not right. All we're asking for is to be treated the same as anyone else, equal rights, and that's it for everyone. Everyone treated the same way under the law.
Well, that's not what he's told the Parliament.
One law for everyone, not not laws for individual groups or minority groups. You know, it's just discrimination.
It does actually say in his in the Act that they want to change parts of the Evidence Act from whatever year it is, goes back a long way, and that is basically designed so they can use that. They're calling it criminal intelligence, secret evidence, etc. And it says somewhere in that Act that that intelligence needs to be protected. So obviously they're not going to disclose what it is.
So you're saying these wouldn't be open hearing stuff?
Well, I think parts of them would be. I think they will rely heavily on what they term intelligence or secret evidence, which until it is tested in a court is basically just hearsay. It's a bit like weapons of mass destruction intelligence.
But they're going to have to convince a judge, aren't they, that what you call your club is a criminal organisation?
Yeah, they're going to have to do that, but how are they going to do it? What's a criminal organisation?
Well,
is there someone that sits at the top and says, you go and rob that bank, you go and... That doesn't happen. That's bullshit. It's just made up.
It is fairly broad. It says...
yeah.
And it's not just targeting the organisations that exist in Western Australia. And it does say organisations. It's another state. It's another country. The Act says that if an offence is committed in another country, that they can then use that on the organisations if they exist in Western Australia. So what if Greenpeace are convicted of a serious criminal offence in a Japanese court? Does it put Greenpeace at risk in Australia?
No, I'd imagine that if they were, I put myself in a position of a judge who has the job of deciding whether you're going to be prescribed under this law. I'd be wanting to get direct evidence that members of that club, as you call them, made up a criminal group. So you'd have to be showing evidence that they're conducting criminal activities and that these people are acting in a way that constitutes organised crime. Surely that would have to be the case, wouldn't it, Doylie, that you'd have to convince a judge?
Yeah, you'd have to convince a judge, but you know, is the judge going to listen to a police officer, or are they going to listen to a guy that rides a bike in a motorcycle club? Who are they going to listen to? We're not going to get any say, and we're not going to know what they've got, evidence they've got against us.
Fellas, we've got a caller for you straight away. If you want to talk to Doylie and Duff today about this, 92211 882 is the number. Just whack on your headsets there because Donna from Vic Park wants to have a say. G'day, Donna.
Hi, Paul. Look, I'm normally a pretty fair and compassionate person, but this is the one time I actually have no empathy. I'm sorry for the biker guys because they really, you go out, you wonder why you're being treated differently, but you go out of your way to be quite intimidating in your appearance. And I've even had someone park on my property, which lawfully they can't do. Yet I've felt very threatened because of their appearance to turn around and say, excuse me, you can't do that. So I really find it hard to... I think you guys need to maybe look at yourselves and, you've got the big, heavy-looking, scary look, and yet you wonder, why are you being picked on? But you actually are incredibly intimidating to the public. So that's really all I wanted to say,
Yeah, well, so Donna, what you look like matters, does it? You should be treated different because of how you look. Because
there is a lot of reports of that you've actually been doing unlawful things, and I guess my experience was someone actually parking on my property where they shouldn't have been, just because it was convenient for them. So really, that was an unlawful activity. So yeah, probably if it had been someone else, I would have said, look, excuse me, you're not meant to be there. But the guy was about 3 times my size. In a heavy jacket with whatever, I can't remember what gang was on there, and I thought, bloody hell, what am I meant to say to that? I'm a little pipsqueak girl, and I've got to take a risk, or if I say something, what the hell's going to happen to my property? Because you guys have vendettas against each other. So, it's not about the way people look, because I'll look at everyone and I try to look fairly, like I said, compassionately, but I don't experience not being very intimidated, and you guys are intimidating, and you actually, there's evidence that you've had, not evidence, where people got killed from different gangs. So, it's kind of a bit unfair for you to even say that, what evidence, when, you guys are killing each other,
All right.
It's Donna, it's clubs, not gangs, to start with. And if the worst that someone from a bike club does is park on your front lawn when they shouldn't, do. I don't think that gives the police or the government the opportunity to.
Well, that doesn't
clear.
constitute organised crime.
No.
Parking on your front lawn. But what Christian Porter said might do. Doylie, you said to me earlier when he'd mentioned those 600 offences, you said, well, a lot of those offences don't translate into convictions. So so specify it. Well, this is what he said later. He said, between 2008 and 2010, police seized 18 kilograms of amphetamines worth $30 million from gang members, his word gang. In the 2 years prior to 2009, police seized 111 illegal firearms in WA. 84 were from outlaw motorcycle gang members and associates. Now, I suppose this is the sort of information they'll be rolling up to a judge if they want to have one of your groups declared as a declared criminal organisation.
So, according to that, there should be a couple hundred bikies in jail then. Is that right?
Over time, yeah. Well, there probably should be, because they'd be offences that would get a bit of jail.
Obviously, they're not, because they haven't been convicted of it.
If that figure's correct, and I don't know whether he's talking about just Western Australia or whether he's talking Australia as a whole, but if that figure's correct, then he wouldn't need this legislation.
Because it's working, you reckon?
It's already working. Why waste all these taxpayers' dollars on running these laws through the courts that have already been beaten twice in the High Court of Australia, and then wasting the taxpayers' dollars again when there's ladies out there needing hip replacements and old grannies and old men, why not spend the money there?
Yeah, look,
it is hospitals or nurses or police's pay.
Doyle, it's an interesting point you raise. I mean, these laws similar to these, have been tried in two states, New South Wales and South Australia. As you rightly said, in both cases, there were appeals taken to the High Court, and the laws were the whole laws were struck down in both of those states. Christian Porter specifically says that those failings in those laws are not in this law. Is that what your lawyers tell you?
Well, we're still getting advice on it at the moment, but
we haven't had an opportunity to go through the Act completely. But we will be doing that. We will get some sort of legal opinion on it, and he would have known that when he was drafting it. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources that he'd probably have at his hands. But
as I understand it, the actions that were taken in South Australia and New South Wales were after people were busted under those laws. They weren't tested as such, were they? It wasn't a test case that went to the High Court. There was actually people who'd been prosecuted under those laws, and real live cases were taken to the High Court.
I think in the New South Wales example, I think the laws were an knee-jerk reaction to an incident at their airport.
Yep.
From memory, I think
that's the common churros one, yeah.
Yeah, it went through Parliament, I think, within a week. I'd be highly sceptical if any politician over there bothered to read it. And, rightly so, got struck down.
All right, look, fellas, we've got some more calls for you, so we'll take a break and we'll come back with those calls. 9221 882 if you want to join in this discussion. It's 18 minutes